Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. It's great to be with you today. And it's Greg and Deb together today. Thank you, Greg, for joining me.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody.
And this is a great subject. And I wanted to talk to you about it together with us, both of us, because if you have a spouse, or if you have some significant other or someone in your life that's a close friend or colleague, everything that we're talking about today is very, very applicable, because we're talking about healthy mindsets when you feel benched. And the topic of this came up with a young mom that was taking a break to raise her kids and was feeling, like, will she be able to re-enter the workplace? And I'm going to approach this next week as well, a little more detail on the skills that you're developing. But today I wanted to talk about the mindsets, especially in encouraging each other. And so there's no greater person that I can imagine being with me on this subject than my husband, who has encouraged me through the years. So we'll just kind of start digging in. Make sure you're getting our articles, which there'll be an article with this, I always put extra links, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And of course, you can get our books, and you can get Deborah Johnson speaker and DJ Works music as well, but you'll get everything through that newsletter as well. So let's talk about that feeling of being benched. And why don't you expound on that just a little bit to start on some of those feelings, because how important it is to encourage each other through this process.
Well, I think the feeling that was being described was, you thought you had everything rolling, and then somehow life just put you on the bench. And in this case, it was becoming a mom of two kids under 3. She was leaving being a professional. But, life has a way of moving, it's all around, where we lose our momentum when we feel stuck. And I think feeling benched is a similar feeling to being stuck. Mm-hmm. And I think all of life is easier when you feel like you got momentum behind you. And it's always harder when you need to provide that initial inertia to get something rolling again. And so that's what she was fighting. That's what we're addressing today.
Right. And we talked about, because many make this decision more and more right now, especially we've gone recently to a homeschool conference. And, there's moms or dads deciding to make their primary focus raising those young kids. And then, but they might work a side job, and they might balance both. They might be a single parent, who knows? But there are some mindsets really to re-entering a workplace, or even taking on side work, in why you feel compelled. And we talked about this, whether it could be a feeling like it's a God-given responsibility, some sort of giftedness, or that you just feel compelled that you need to do something else. So, and I've been a musician, so there's a certain amount of that I really understand, that you feel like, you don't want your skills to just be totally gone at that point. And so I've never really quit working completely, but I've made the choice, of course, to be more home-centered. So why don't you expound on that one a little bit, because there were some of the mindsets that I had faced as well, and how we can encourage each other in that.
Well, I mean, again, your thing got back to momentum, and at certain times in your career, you had a certain amount of momentum, and then suddenly the financial crisis hit, and all that momentum disappeared, and people weren't booking, and I think the thing that comes up when you're benched, or somehow your career gets set aside, is you need to reevaluate who you are, where you're at, and based on the answers to those questions, where can you go from here?
Right.
And one of the important things is when you're benched is to reevaluate so that you can have confidence. At times in my baseball career, I got benched, and as you're watching other guys perform, and you're going, they're not that good. Part of what you need to do is go, why did I get benched? What caused me to get set aside? What skills do I still have? And I've found when you write stuff down, it helps. So skipping out of the baseball metaphor and back into real life, if you start, writing down the degrees you had, the amount of experience you've got, perhaps throughout all the experience, you've got a specialized niche that you've created. Measure how good you are interpersonally. Can you lead small groups? Can you lead workshops? Are you especially good at writing? Just do an inventory. And when you get through with the inventory, then probably sit down with your spouse and get some input and just ask, does this sound like me?
Right.
And if so, you'll develop the confidence to figure out where you can go next. I remember reading a book, it was probably 15 years ago, called 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And he talked through how to become an expert. And he was spoofing on the idea of experts, because everybody claims to be an expert these days. And he was showing you how that you can write 4 articles and get them posted, create a website, and say you're a published author, and suddenly you're an expert. And you could start pushing yourself to get on CNN as an expert. And that prompted me to, because I was in my financial career at the time, to just start asking myself the questions. Okay, so where am I? And so I listed my degrees, I listed my certifications, I listed all of the special certifications I had picked up. And then I started keeping track of how many pages I read a month. And it was something like 1,000 pages a month, which meant over a year, I was reading 1,200 pages of specialized material on global economics, stock market related issues, specific company things. And, I'd been in the business, I don't know, let's say 10 years at the time. Well, if I'd been doing that the whole time, I'd read something like 12,000 pages. And, suddenly when I got all that on a piece of paper, I realized, hey, I am an expert. And, and once you are willing to accept that about yourself, then you start reading and writing with a little bit different swagger in your step. And I think that confidence is what matters. So when you feel stuck, and in the securities business, you're one of 8 million guys who are trying to get the next client. You are definitely a commodity, and I think all of us feel like commodities. And I've told Deb a zillion times that the most important sale you will ever make is to yourself. And when the world's telling you you're an economy, a commodity, the most important realization to come to is how you are different than all of the other people. And convincing yourself that you've got a niche, that you're an expert in some area, that you're unique, that you bring something different and substantial to the table, is the first vital mindset that you need to put into place in order to move ahead in a profitable way.
Wow. That was so well said. For those of you who are listening, you need to back this up and listen to this like 10 times, because that was really well said. And it's something that when you write down something, we're all about, putting everything on just, a computer or on a document, that sort of document. But when you actually spend the time physically to do that, it's amazing what it reveals itself. And also with somebody that you know real well, because we were just talking this morning about the attribute, because I realized later, after our middle son got to a certain stage, that the reason why I had so many conflicts with him is that our personalities were so similar. And you use the word for me, irrepressible. And there's been a couple words that I've had to look up, and that was one, thinking, irrepressible. What does that really mean? And that's proven to be true, but it's something I didn't really see that mirror in myself. And so when we're talking about encouraging each other in our mindsets, sometimes we write those things down, but we need a mirror. We need somebody in our life that says, let's get a little bit of a feedback on this.
So you can gain some clarity.
Yeah, really. And you don't have to brag about things. All you need to do is just to say, do you see this quality, or where do you see this developing? Because
and this isn't a matter of bragging. This is a matter of accurately assessing yourself.
Yes.
I mean, if you brag, if you try to convince yourself you're more than you are, that facade eventually leaves you standing firmly in midair.
Right.
Instead of firmly on a really solid foundation. So if you're feeling stuck, now's the time to be really honest.
Yeah.
And reflecting back, some of the feedback I give Deb is just saying the same thing in a different way with a different phrase. She had used the word confidence. I used the word irrepressible. And just that slightly different twist on things, I think, is what a spouse or a confidant can sometimes bring.
That was very, very valuable that way, and to be able to encourage each other through this time, because there are so many changes, and basically I wanted to approach when you have that family and you're re-entering again, because a lot of people re-enter when they're mid-career or they're half-time of life.
Right.
And now their kids are at a certain stage and they think, do I have any skills anymore? Have I lost everything?
Yeah. And so it's really important to affirm that you do have skills.
Yes.
Because the biggest thing you need is confidence getting back into the workplace.
Right.
And remember, the workplace always will treat you as a commodity.
Yes.
They always will treat you as just vanilla Jane.
Right.
And you need to first convince yourself that you are sizzling Susie, not vanilla Jane, and that you are bringing something unique to the workplace.
Right. I love that. Sizzling Susie. Okay. I will use that again. So, and also touch on how important it is, because you're so busy. In fact, I've used the illustration before. I'll be talking next week even more about this, because there was a book I read by the actress and the model, Raquel Welch, if anybody remembers her, gorgeous. But she wrote a book, and my mom had given it to me. I loved the book because it was on yoga, which I am so unflexible. It's crazy. I can't even do a lot of those things. But it was a beautiful picture of how to develop flexibility, which I wanted to do more of. And she mentioned in that book that when you have young kids, it's one of the busiest times of your life. It totally is. For both spouses, for a single parent, for whoever, it is really, really busy. You've got this new life that comes home from the hospital, and you wonder, what do I do with it now? I don't have everybody around me. And, can I ever get any sleep again? And you're just exhausted. All of these things happen. And then you get to a certain point and you go, my brain feels like mush. I mean, even if you're working part-time or whatever, you're still feeling like, oh, I've lost my edge. So we wanted to bring up the importance of supporting each other in reading, like you said, how much you were reading per week in your job, and you developed your own practice too, which is a big deal. It's not easy because that's a lifetime entrepreneurial project right there, that you can do that and be successful. But in reading, whether, grabbing online content, whether to do continuing ed and not let, some of your certifications lapse, keep this. I mean, my sister was a respiratory therapist. She kept she kept that on for years until she finally decided she really didn't want to do it again. But it's something that, you can do during this time of life. So let's talk about that just briefly, and some of those things and how we can encourage each other in that mindset, because it takes time. And when you're tired, okay, is it worth it, to do that? So, but encouraging each other in that, I think, is an important aspect of that continuing, reading, education, and all of that.
I think generally reading with a purpose is necessary. So whether you're going to read to keep a certification, or you're going to read to keep your expert edge, or whatever it is, that you have a goal in mind, that this is who I want to stay. This is not who I want to become. It's who I want to continue to be.
Yeah.
And but again, that's a question you got to settle. First convince yourself that that's what you want to be, and then convince yourself that that's who you are.
And it leads us into that area too of technology and management, and most will find that they can keep up with a lot of the technology. I mean, that our kids are like grandkids today are doing things that, I mean, we didn't do when we were growing up. We didn't have computers, we didn't have anything, but we have gradually learned and done all, with that. And most parents now that have young kids, you'll be able to keep up all along, because sometimes you feel like technology gets away from you too. Like, will I ever be able to enter and to do the technology? But again, there's reading, there's very just basics that you need to do.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, if you took 3 days of concentrated effort, you could become almost an expert in Excel.
Yeah.
Any computer program, if you could set aside 3 days with the right tutor,
right.
You could become very proficient.
Right.
So, the idea that somehow you're technologically challenged is really silly. What it is just finding the time to be able to concentrate, and with the right amount of attention, you can do that. All these programs are fairly intuitive. That's why everybody knows how to use them.
Right.
If they were really hard to use, the people that you're competing against wouldn't be able to use them either.
Right. And you have to realize that stuff happens. Okay, I lost a document this week, and it was like, the whole article I had written, spent, hours on, and it just disappeared.
I think that might be the reason we have kids, though. If you're balancing 2 or 3 kids, stuff happens, and that's why we don't cry over spilt milk. And
I was ready to cry. I was like, I hate to waste time. I just hate to waste time.
Yeah.
But it does. It teaches you that stamina, because the moment stuff like that happens, you feel like, well, I should just hang it up. I should just, and no.
Isn't it interesting that the human dynamic is to just hang it up?
It is.
It's funny that's our instinct.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to, does God exist, and does the devil exist? And you got to ask yourself the question: if we all instinctively fall back to self-rejection, there's got to be an invisible enemy somewhere that's universal. And it's nice having the hope of winning on your side to overcome those bad thoughts.
That is a really, really great point. So, but just realize in technology, because I have heard that phrase, over and over and over, oh, I'm just bad at tech. From people that have to use tech all the time in their fields, and they're just still, there's that excuse.
So here's a great place to write stuff down. If you find yourself constantly saying I'm bad at tech, one day get a cup of coffee and a blank piece of paper and write down, if I was good at tech, what would I know?
Wow.
And you know, I guarantee when you first start writing, you think there's going to be 33 things that you have to write down, and there's going to be 3 or 4.
Yeah.
If you dare to write it down, what you'll discover is becoming good at tech isn't that hard. It's, you know, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Write it down, get over your mindset.
You don't have to know code. You don't have to know all that stuff. You just, basics, really all you need. So I hope this has been really, really encouraging for some listeners, especially that are, maybe you're at the point of going back into the workplace, or you know, you've continued working on the side, but you're thinking about doing something else now. You have more time, or you could be at mid-career and thinking, could I really do this? Well, I talk about this in my course, Hero Mountain Summit. It's a huge course, but we go through your skills and building your confidence and your competence too, in competency, and how important that is to affirm where you are and where you want to be. And sometimes that's just a time of discovery. You just have to spend time discovering. And we rarely take a step back. We're always looking to push ahead. Take a step back, write those things down. What a great suggestion there. So, and I feel very fortunate. Greg and I have not always had the time to sit over coffee like we do now. But because we do that, you get to have the benefit of our conversations once a month on this podcast.
Yep.
And I just feel so fortunate in that, because I think there's a lot of those, you know, thinking through these things that need to hear from that perspective of how important that is. And have your spouse or have your, you know, one of your colleagues listen to this as well, and to say, okay, how can we start an accountability to really encourage each other? But make sure that you have those people in your close circle. And so that's a real benefit that I have, that I hope that you feel encouraged and that to share with you at this point in your life. And so anyway, thanks again for being with me today. Yeah. It's always a treat. And actually, then I hear from people that have listened to them and go, oh, I love the ones that you guys do together. They're just so much fun. Well, it's fun, especially when you go off and do some sort of comment. But yeah, it's really, he's a little wittier than I am. I'm a little bit more serious, you know, but anyway, we have a good time, and I just appreciate all of your listeners, and of course, Greg being with me today. Make sure that you connect with us with our newsletter, though. I call it newsletter, but it's really weekly e-articles. You can unsubscribe anytime. It's double opt-in, so I don't automatically sign people up. You need to sign up, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And so we will look forward. We'll be with you together again next month, but I'll look forward to being with you again next week. So bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.